Good morning, Mr. Mike Seeklander. We're live.
We are, sir. Guess what I have my camera propped up on, Mr. Rich Brown?
The Holy Bible.
No, I probably should. That's probably a better idea. It's actually on a book called American Whiskey.
Ooh.
Yeah, pretty cool, huh?
That sounds fantastic. Sounds fantastic. While we're waiting for folks to jump on to today's show, I want to talk to you about something near and dear to my heart, the American Warrior Society. And this, my dear friends, is the coin. If you listen to a podcast, you can't see the beautiful challenge coin of the American Warrior Society. But look at this. It's on my shirt, it's on my wall, and it's here on the challenge coin. On the back, it says Warriors Wanted because we're always looking for new members to be a part of our tribe, to take advantage of all the training in the training vault. And yeah, American Warrior Society, man. 14.
Hey, Rich, is that one of the new hoodies that you're wearing, or is that an old hoodie?
No, brother, we never did this classic hoodie in black. So if you're listening to the show, you can't see it. And we're about to make these available for purchase. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. We're happy to sell you one as soon as we get that.
Wait, any color as long as it's camo, right?
We have those too. That's correct. We have
right.
Yeah, we have a camouflage and we have the black. So yeah, not available for purchase yet, Mike. When is that going to be available?
Very soon, probably today or tomorrow, maybe in the next couple of days. I'm teaching a class tomorrow, so hopefully the products are all in the store, folks. We just had to inventory some of the old gray ones that we're going to sell as well that I had in stock here. And then we have some of the new classic blacks, and then the camo, I think, variant of the hoodies and stuff like that. So be on the lookout for the web store to be live again. It's still live, but it's not very apparent because some of the products, we removed a bunch of the products. So hopefully very, very soon. So
yeah, it's going to be streamlined. We're going to offer the classic black t-shirt. That's the only t-shirt you can get. We're going to offer the black hoodie, and we're going to offer a camouflage version, which you may have seen me here on the show with before. I absolutely love that. Jason Brown is on. Good morning, brother. Semper Fi. Alan Kelly is on from Occupy, Virginia. He is coin number 1571. Click the links in today's show notes if you want to find out if becoming a member of our community is the right decision for you and your family. John Shriver is on from Oklahoma, coin number 1919. PJ out there in California. Hope you're doing well, brother. He is coin number 2093. Dr. Gordon Botson is in Ohio, coin number 1688. Before I read, today's show is going to be interesting because I'm going to treat Mike like he's just any other guest. Not that he's the co-host of the American Warrior Show. He's just a dude that I brought on the show, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. We are going to do a giveaway today, guys, and here's how it's going to work. I'm going to let you have the choice that was never granted to your old pal, Rich Brown. You can choose one of Mike's books. I think he's written like a dozen or more. You can choose on violence and varietals if you just want to raise your testosterone and check out Rich Brown's memoir. Or I'm going to let you choose a piece of apparel. So all you have to do to be in this randomized drawing at the end of the show is share today's show. If you share today's show in a group on your page, wherever you share it, you're going to be in the randomized drawing. So if that sounds cool to you, then I encourage you to share today's show. Go ahead and hit that button now. And while you're hitting the button, Mike, I'm going to read your bio for those that have never heard of Mr. Seeklander before. Mike Seeklander is the owner of Shooting Performance LLC, a full-service training company, and the American Warrior Society. Mike was the co-host of The Best Defense, the Outdoor Channel's leading firearms instructional program. Previously, Mike was a chief operations officer, director of training, and senior instructor at the United States Shooting Academy, as well as being a branch chief and lead instructor for the Firearms Division of the Federal Air Marshal Service, as well as a senior instructor at FLETC. Currently a nationally ranked competitor on the practical handgun competition circuit, Seeklander has authored, produced instructional books, DVDs, videos, and developed hundreds of lesson plans specifically related to basic and advanced firearms training. Before that, he was a police officer with the Knox County Sheriff's Department, as well as the Knoxville Police Department, where he worked in corrections, patrol, and the organized crime division. 1990, Mike joined the United States Marine Corps and trained as an intelligence specialist, which is still shocking to many people that know him, where he had a top secret clearance and is a combat veteran of Desert Storm, Desert Shield, what others may call Gulf War I. Mike, welcome back to your show.
Did you just say that surprised most people that I was an intelligence specialist.
That is correct.
Was that the exact wording you used? I'm not sure if I heard that correctly. Maybe it was the audio. We have tornado warnings and thunder, so it could have been maybe a clap of thunder that
No,
overrode your voice and was very loud and confusing. That it couldn't have been what I heard, right?
no, 100%. A lot of people still can't believe it. It wasn't a surprise to me. Let's just be clear. But
Okay.
most people, they're stunned. Let's put it. Ted is on from Mississippi. Will is on from Missouri. Our good friend Will Parker's out there in Montana. Said work at Freddie Merck's is never done, as it should be. Once again, like and share to be put in for the drawing. And without much further ado, Mike, what have you been up to since you were on last?
Man, what have I been up to? Just normal stuff, man. Training and traveling, teaching a variety of classes all over the place. Actually prepping for a class in Oklahoma this weekend. If you're listening to this today, which maybe you're listening to this today and have a chance, we are doing a class in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. But just traveling road, so man, doing that and then training as much as I possibly can when I'm back here at the house and trying to keep up the family. Actually using one of our sponsors products, our buddy Ryan Wimpy, who owns Tip Top Canine Training. He and his guys have been over here working with one of our poodles recently, so that's been a very, very interesting experience. But otherwise,
Cool.
just doing my thing, man.
Very cool. Books, man. We're going to talk about some of your books here in just a second. But books, what are a couple of your favorite books?
My favorite books that I've written or
read, not written. Read.
Man, what would be my favorite books? You know, I don't consume books exactly like you do. I try to be very specific in when I read what I read. So for example, in the evening, I will tend to read fiction or something that just kind of turns my brain off. You know, the Mitch Rapp series or the series, several different fictional series, and then the other stuff that I read is of course shooting books. I think I own almost every shooting book out there. So I've studied those books and books like that for many, many years. And by the way, one of my all-time favorite shooting books is Thinking Practical Shooting by Saul Kirsch. And he has a second book. I'd actually tried to get him to send it to me on PDF and let me buy it on a PDF so I could read it on my iPad, and he wouldn't do it. Saul's a very strict businessman, apparently. But he has a fantastic book, and it was one of my favorite all-time shooting books was Thinking Practical Shooting. Otherwise, you know, there's a lot of great books, man, but it's something I would dive into maybe that's not fictional would be the, what is it? The Lewis and Clark journey.
Stephen Ambrose, Undaunted
Stephen
Courage.
Ambrose, Undaunted Courage. Man, I don't know why I love that book so much. And there's actually a backstory to the book. I bought that book years ago when I was a flying air marshal, and it was a big, thick paper book. And I started reading it, and in the first part of that book, it's not boring, but it's very logistical. It's, you know, the things that led up to that journey. And man, I got to the point where it's like, this is getting really, really good. You know, they've kicked it off, you know, they're floating down the river, a bunch of stuff had happened. And I left the book on an airplane, and I just never went back and bought it again. And then years later, I went and actually purchased it on my iPad and finally read the whole book and have reread it a couple of times. I just, you know, as you know, I'm from Wyoming. We travel to Wyoming and Montana and Idaho all the time. And I just love that area. We have actually stayed at an old rickety motel that is on the river that was on their journey, which is very interesting. And I don't know, man, that's probably one of my all-time favorite non-fictional books if I'm not reading a technical book about shooting or business or whatever else. So.
Oh, great answer, man. Gregory says, good morning, brothers. He is coin number 1928 from Rhode Island. Tina is on. She has shared it to shoot with girls of the low country there in beautiful South Carolina. Please like and hit that share button, because you do. I'm going to give you the choice that Mr. Seeklander never had. You're going to get to choose what kind of prize you want. I like your choice, man. I need to read that book. I'm familiar with it. I think I own a copy of it. I just haven't got around to it. The Undaunted Courage part is real, because I mean, just hiking out there now, it seems like, ooh, we're a long way from anywhere. But imagine
It's
those guys, bro.
it's
God,
amazing, man. I mean, literally, yeah, you get in the middle of maybe the wilderness in Idaho or Montana. It's like, wow, this is a wild hike. This is a wild place. Just to go in this day's age and maybe, repeat some of the hikes that they did would be scary and wild. We're literally surrounded by fire lines and roads, and you could walk in any direction unless you're deep in the Idaho wilderness. Probably find civilization or a cabin pretty quickly. They were walking into the middle of nothing, and they had all of their stuff and all of their boats. I couldn't imagine what that was like to have to take, some of these large boats and all their supplies and move it from one river to another small river overland. And it's amazing, man.
it's like a trip to the moon. I mean, an equivalency, because
Literally.
there's no backup for months. I mean, it's terrible. Rudy is on. Guile is back in the Philippines. Think you had a good, safe journey there, Guile. Get you back there out of Japan. Rudy is on. Tony is on. Good morning, folks. Like that share button. Thanks to the 16 folks watching us live. Okay, what's on your workout playlist? When Mike Seeklander tunes up his workout playlist, what are you listening to, man?
That's a great question. So you said you would spontaneously hit me with questions. So
Yep.
one more thing that Rich probably knows, but not a lot of people know is, when it comes to music and songs, I don't know the names of many songs. I don't know the names of hardly any songs, like the classics, like Welcome to the Jungle, which I have on my list, by the way. But I don't know the names of songs or the names of song, artists very well. I don't know why. I know the tune. I can repeat the tune. I can repeat the words, but I couldn't play the radio game that Rich is famously better than the Todd Orr at, where literally, folks, by the way, if you don't know this, you could play almost any song and his dorky brain will know the name of the song and who sings it. So my cousin Todd Orr, the Todd Orr that was mauled by a grizzly bear a few years ago, and Rich play this as we drive around the mountains of Montana. I know these are weird fun facts, maybe not entertaining for a podcast, but Rich is a master at it. Anyways, I don't know. What do I have? I have Welcome to the Jungle, Joker and the Thief. I've got a lot of motivational things like in disperse. So I'll have Last Resort by Papa Roach, and then, Day by Day, which is a motivational speech, Car Radio, Thunder, Crazy Train by Ozzy, Animals, Maroon 5. There's all kinds of stuff here. And then toward the tail end of my workout playlist, I purposely have a bunch of like kind of motivational little, not motivational speeches, but they're music and motivational, both like Make It to Morning and, Never Quit. I got Deutschland on there, Natural. So just a wild variety of pretty hard stuff. But there's also, that's my workout playlist on Spotify. But Rich, you probably know, I don't know if you use Spotify, but there's also a high energy playlist. And then there's a high adrenaline playlist. Those are songs that if someone else picked and I just, I listen to them. And so I just randomly go back and forth.
Jason says, what about that book on violence and varietals? Do you like that book? I think it's by a guy named Rich Brown.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
I love it. Let's go. So you can have lunch. This is one of those icebreaker questions. You can have lunch or sip whiskey with anyone alive, dead, fictional or non-fictional. Who would it be and why?
Anyone
alive, dead, fictional, non-fictional.
Wow, that's a good one. I don't know, man. I've never even thought about that question. Who would I sit with? Geez, man. You know what? Maybe I'm going to pick Lewis and Clark then. How about that? Since that was my favorite book. Initially my first thought was, because we should also go with first thoughts on a podcast. I don't know. I'd love to meet The Rock for whatever reason, whether or not you like his political views and some of his posts and stuff, but he's an interesting dude. But I think I would actually have a discussion with Lewis and Clark and say, hey, man, let's talk about the journey. What was that actually like? Tell me about it. I think that would be wild.
As you were pausing to answer that question, I normally say some family, like my mama comes to mind. I mean, she was one of the greatest people that ever impacted my life, and to have sit down with her and break bread one more time would be amazing. Beyond something like that, as you were thinking, I'm like, man, what about like Wyatt Earp or Doc Holliday or
Oh man,
wow, pick their brain, man.
man, that's a great choice. That would be a fantastic choice. One of those guys,
Yeah,
because there's so much urban legend about those guys. It's like you could pick their brain about what actually happened at the OK Corral and what was the Dodge City like, and all these places that they were working these rough and tumbly, drunken miner / cowboy towns. Oh, that'd be a fantastic conversation, man.
yeah, it would. There's so much to pick their brain about, and just sip whiskey with Doc Holliday. Woo, yeah. So put in the comments who you would vote. Will Parker says Thomas Jefferson or Jesus Christ. That's an interesting question. Yeah, I mean, so who put it in the comments? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. You've written a lot of books, man, more than a dozen. Do you have a favorite
of the ones I've written? Is that
yeah.
what you said?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've written more than a dozen, man. So first book was your
Counting your training logs,
training program. Okay, yeah. If you count the logs, I think the two least sold, and for whatever reason, the defensive rifle training program and then the art of instruction, both you helped me on, I think, all of my books or most of them. But I think the defensive rifle training program book is by far the best put together. It's the best edited. It has the best photography in it. It's got the best layout. It's just a really well done book. And it was a book that I thought would really just sell like wildflowers, when I say that, because during that time frame, millions of ARs had been sold, and there were millions of AR owners out there because of the Obama stuff and all this craziness that was going on, and they all thought that these rifles would be banned. And I certainly have sold a lot of copies of that book and all my other books, but strangely enough, not a lot. And then the art of instruction got, folks, if you're an instructor and you own the art of instruction, it's one of those books where people don't know a lot about it. I guess I haven't done a great job of promoting it. It's the only book out there that actually tells my full background and full bio. And it's, something, Rich, you helped me with a ton. And it really is a pretty deep, I think, dive into instructing. We're actually updating it. We've been updating it for a while now, but I'm really going to expand that book a ton, so any instructor could grab that book and utilize it both to understand and learn the structure of instructing, as well as, I'm going to include a chapter, Rich. We haven't talked a lot about this, about the fundamental 5, and I think how the fundamental 5 drills apply across the board in any kind of instruction you're doing, and how I think they're codified to the point where I don't think there would ever be another change to those fundamental 5 drills for handgun instruction. I'm going to develop a fundamental 5 for defensive rifle instruction or defensive carbine instruction as well. But those drills will be in the chapter, not so people can follow Mike Seeklander's technique and system necessarily, but they can follow those fundamental, or utilize those fundamental drills to really mentor their students at a baseline, and then they can take them anywhere they want. So I think those are the 2 proudest books. Of course, my first book was the hardest, Your Competition Handgun Training Program. Funny story about that is, about a month ago, I was teaching a class, and I was in front of a group of 16 students, and we were talking about a technique, and someone said, "Yeah, you talk about that in your book." And another student is like, "You wrote a book?" And I'm always perplexed at, I think we talked about this on a podcast too, is, am I that bad of a marketer, or are people just that unobservant? Because you really can't go onto my website to register for a class without bumping into a book, or at least a mention of a book. So it was the hardest. And I don't know if you want me to go into details. It's a funny story too. The outline of the competition handgun training program book happened while I was on a high-speed train in France, because my buddy Phil Strader and I shot a big match, and I forgot my passport in the rental car. So I had to train from Paris back to the place we shot the match at, which was like a 3-hour ride, and then back to Paris again to get my passport so I could get out of the country. So I bought a bunch of espresso and wrote the outline of that book in my notebook while I was on that trip. So
I did not know that. Will Parker asked, does Mike offer a PDF downloadable copy of his books?
I don't offer a PDF downloadable copy of my books for sale per se. You can get them all on digital, iPad, whatever else you want. Whatever reader you want. Of course, if you're a member, you can, as Will Parker knows, you can access those books in the membership vault.
Yep. Ted Leonard says, my wife and I really appreciated the Best Defense show, which is my next question. What was your favorite episode you guys did over there and why?
Well, the Best Defense was a fantastic show for a lot of reasons, and I'm still certainly disappointed that the network dropped our version of that show and also let Mr. Mike Janich and I go basically without telling us why. So, full disclosure on that, it was kind of a weird deal because I think we had a lot of impact in the community and folks that watch that show. I think maybe we don't have a definitive proof of saves, where some of the things that we taught maybe saved a life, but from the hearsay we got, we probably did. But my favorite episode would probably be one of the big box ones. We did a mass shooting episode and filmed it in Colorado. That was kind of a Best Defense offshoot where we actually literally rented out a theater and we had over 100 role players / extras, and we did a huge mass shooting. And actually, in that particular mass shooting, there was a dude that comes in with a gas mask on and an AK-47, and that was me. And actually, I almost broke my back on that particular take. I fell down the stairs because it was snowing and cold out, I think in Colorado, or raining or something, and I couldn't see very well, and I slipped on the stairs coming down the theater. So that was really a very, very well done episode. It was very theatrical. It had a certain, the way they filmed it, it had a certain look and a certain feel. I think that was very impactful in terms of what we taught in that show.
Sweet. And if you're just joining us now, remember there's a giveaway, folks. So make sure you share today's show to be in for that. Mike, the next question I want to ask you is, what are you guys up to over there on live fire? I think there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what it is, what it's intended to be, how to use it. What's going on over there?
Man, that's a great question. And for those that are confused, hey, listen, I'm confused on a daily basis too. And I'm not embarrassed for the founders, Mikey and Brock, to hear that. It's not in a bad way, because live fire has evolved so much over the last 2 years and changed so much. The initial version of live fire was a premium paid for app. That was the only way you could get in. And it offered the ability to consume training content, utilize a logbook, utilize a built-in part-timer, post your results so another shooter could look at your logs and participate in your training and maybe give feedback or whatever else. So the way I like to talk about live fire is everything that facilitates your live fire goal. Of course, it is a digital app. It's an app that's on a phone, but it's a very, very advanced content portal. Now, fast forward to today, where now live fire has a full and open social feed, and that was specifically by my request. So while it may feel like to some live fire users, we took a hard left and did get into social, where initially we said, hey, we're not going to be a standard social media app or company. It was because I kept getting bumped off of Instagram, and every time I posted a picture of a handgun or the rear of a slide and an optic, like something like this, I would get bumped off Instagram or Facebook or whatever else. I still can't run Facebook ads, by the way. Still haven't found a human that I can speak to, even though we're live on Facebook right now, to fix that. So we built a full social network. So now the logbook is much more advanced, but it's, if you're on live fire right now and you are an alliance member, that simply means a premium member. The current version of the logbook, what you see right now, is like child's play compared to what it's about to be. It's about to be a very metric-driven visual experience. So you can literally see in your dry fire and live fire reps, wow, these are my trends and how much I'm dry firing per week this month. And then eventually that will seamless transition into, for example, a guy that's in law enforcement that shoots a qualification on a regular basis will probably be able to see his metrics in the amount of dry fire and live fire work he or she does and compare that to his score. Or a competitor will be able to say, wow, it looks like I sucked at the Oklahoma State match, right? So why did I suck? Well, guess what? your dry fire trends are way down, your live fire trends are way down. So now, there are multiple programs on there that are my programs. Eventually, instructors will be able to offer their own paid content. Instructors actually can use live fire, and I don't want to go too deep into this. There's a very in-depth portal where an instructor could post their own paid events. They could schedule events. They can control their own group. They can post their own content. They can develop their own drills. Matter of fact, any live fire alliance member can develop their own drills and then post them. So very short term, that's going to be much more advanced. And that's where it's going right now. So the goal is to make it the ultimate training tool for someone that consumes content digitally and likes to use an app, not just a content portal. Because you can watch, as you know, Rich, you can watch YouTube on your phone. So we want to be on that.
Well, and that's what I want to be clear about. Like if the question comes up, like, what's the difference between the American Warrior Society and live fire? To me, there are two separate lanes. One is, like you said, it's a metric-driven place. There's some social interaction. You can log your training reps. It's going to help you and prompt you in that way. Whereas the training portal at the American Warrior Society is all of the training programs, from less lethal, combatives, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, edge weapons, rifle, handgun, etc., where you're going to have to consume it as you wish, and there's no social interaction. You want that, you're going to have to go to live fire.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And there's an American Warrior Society coin members group in live fire, and there's a bunch of our content in there, and there potentially will be more in the future. But to be honest with you, if you're a coin member and you're listening or watching this right now, this was something where Rich and I talked about it, and I don't know what the use of the content in live fire is. So for me to put all of our content into live fire, I think it's a much better viewing experience. There's no doubt about that than our current training vault on, for example, an iPhone. But a lot of our content in AWS is content, to be honest, that the user needs to take the time to dive into. It is better experienced on a laptop or an iPad or a normal computer where you can watch the video in full size, and then utilize the training drills in the training vault when you go to the range, which you can access and see on your phone. But in my opinion, it's a much better viewing experience on a different device. And it's also long form content. Full disclosure, I think most people are listening to this right now appreciate long form content, but there's a lot of people out there that are opposed to long form content. They're just like, just give me the 1 minute version of it. Well, guess what? There's not a 1 minute version of becoming a brain surgeon, right? There's not a 1 minute version of becoming a psychologist or a masterclass shooter. There's no 1 minute version there. So I certainly, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I wish people would recognize that this whole 1 minute attention span is something we've been driven to by social media, right? Where everybody is trying to get attention in 10 to 20 seconds to get a click or a like. Where in reality, if you want to master or be good at anything, you need to get off that short form version and dive in and consume stuff. And if you're not going to do that, you're never going to be the best at something.
Yeah, well said, man. Do you have a favorite drill? And there are a million drills out there. It seems like everybody in our community has authored at least a damn dozen, man. Do you have a favorite drill, whether it's one that you developed or somebody else has developed? And if so, why do you like that one?
Yeah, I love these questions. My favorite, if I had to pick one drill to work, let's just say handgun shooting skill, would be the X drill, an X drill variant. So if you can imagine an X drill variant, we would space two, let's say IDPA or U.S.P.S.A. or even maybe a combat type silhouette target. Two of those, 3 to 5 yards apart, 7 to 15 yards, probably 10 yards would be the optimum distance. And then you would shoot a pattern of shots that may be such as 2 to the left body, 2 to the right head, 2 to the left head, 2 to the right body. That's an 8-shot pattern. If you wanted to go back to the body, that would be a 10-shot pattern. It could be a 3-shot drill, 3 to the left body, 3 to the right head. So in that particular drill, if we add a draw from concealment or from our competitive gear, and we add a reload, we're now effectively working our draw our reload, our speed. So we're probably shooting faster and using more of a an accelerated pull on the body and a control pull on the head. We're working transition to a hard target. We're working a transition to an easy target. So it's a fantastic drill. I love it. And if you simply increase the distance an appropriate amount, let's say to 20 yards, you can do the same thing with a carbine or a short rifle or whatever else. And it's, once again, a fantastic drill for a two-target setup drill.
Absolutely agree with you. And there's transitions in there. You're working trigger speed in there. Man, you're working the different kind of trigger pulls, accelerated pull, controlled pull. I mean, that is a fantastic drill. And I love the point that you make. Like, you can add in a draw and a magazine reload, and you really got everything.
Right. Yeah. As Rich, the full two-shot X drill is facing uprange, turn, draw, shoot pattern 1, which would be 2 to the left body, 2 to the right head, 2 to the left head, 2 to the right body, reload, shoot pattern 2, which would be 2 to the right body, 2 to the left head, 2 to the right head, 2 to the left body. Now, there's some variances in the patterns in my competition book. So, for example, on some of the X drills, I actually have shooters, transitioning from body to head, and they're always going to a bigger small target area. But that was a simple version of adding the draw, a turn and draw, and the reload, and it's just a fantastic drill. By the way, like actually last night did an IDPA training session, and by the way, we could talk about how we set up our training sessions. And we started with what I call X drill patterns. So we both had 2 targets. They were spread probably about 4 yards away. We were 10-ish, maybe 9 yards from the target. And we did a higher volume amount of draws because we're grooving in with new gear, with IDPA gear versus our U.S.A and IPSC setup, which I just finished training. And we would start by going, for example, draw and fire 2 to the left body, 2 to the right head. So now I'm pushing fast on the left body in the A zone, or I guess it was technically the IDPA 0 zone, Rich. And then transition to the right head and try to shoot 2 zeros. And we're picking zeros the entire time. Then the next rep would be draw and fire 2 to the right head, 2 to the left head. The next rep would be draw and fire 2 to the left head, 2 to the right body. So now we speed up, and then 2 to the right body, 2 to the left body, and then we would switch up the pattern. So it's just a fantastic drill for a 4-shot drill, and then we would put the entire 8 or 10-shot pattern together.
No, I love it, man. Which this isn't in my, and just full disclosure, Mike didn't get a read ahead on these questions. They're coming at him cold. So, but I appreciate you thinking on your feet, man. But for your average CCW guy or gal who perhaps is never going to shoot competition, but they're about to order targets and spend their hard-earned money, what target would you encourage them to get? Would you get a humanoid silhouette like an IPSC target? And if so, would it be an IDPA target or a U.S.A target?
I would have a hard time recommending anything other than a standard IDPA target. I think the IDPA target offers a high circle in the chest that's pretty anatomically correct. It does offer a circle in the head. I do know that the head is not anatomically as perfect as it could be because it has technically no neck. But there's a circle in the head that's representative of a potential headshot. It's cardboard, so it's going to stand up to a lot of abuse. I think it would just be very difficult to beat an IDPA target in paper format or cardboard format. It is dark. It's a brown target, right? And when I say that, that's the color and the shade of the target. I think if you look around you, like Rich, you're wearing a dark sweatshirt. I'm wearing a gray shirt. I think if you look at it, any humans around you, there tend to be some sort of a darker silhouette, even if they're wearing a lighter colored shirt. And let me be very specific. We're not talking about skin color here. So anybody that's thinking a sarcastic thought, go elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think it represents what you want to translate either your dot or your iron sights to in terms of having to shoot. I think my second choice would be a silhouette type target that is an actual picture of a human wearing actual clothes without any distinct scoring lines. So I don't want to be able to see distinct scoring lines from, let's say, 7 or 10 yards away. I would like scoring areas, or at least there was a target we used a long time ago. I don't remember the number of it, Rich, but it was an anatomically correct target. So you could see this humanoid, this person. It was an actual person, but when you got close, there was a faint outline of the lungs, the spinal cord, where the heart would be, and all these things. So you knew exactly what you were hitting as you were shooting this paper target. That would probably be my second favorite target.
Oh, I like that. And if you want to up your game, since this hypothetical guy or gal that's about to buy their first targets in bulk, you can always take an old T-shirt, that you're about to throw out, throw it over the target and shoot that. If you're training, and it's a low cost solution
100%.
to take it to the next level. Yeah.
I 100% agree with that.
Gregory says, regardless of how you learn, one needs to do the work. AWS and Livefire provide the skills and knowledge needed for your success. So Semper Fi, brother. Greatly appreciate that. William says, I like the X drill and at times stagger the target distance as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%, William. Love it. That's absolutely a great idea.
Alan says, what about the FBI Q target?
Not a fan, man. Not a fan of the fact that it's just that white. I think it's generally a white or a gray background. To me, it doesn't represent the color and the shape of a humanoid as much. I'm okay with the scoring area with that particular target, but I've never been a huge fan of it. I just don't think it offers as many things as some other targets do. I think if I were to design, everybody's tried to encourage me to design a target over the years, and I've just never put the time or effort. I think I would probably design a target, and there are some targets out there that are probably just like this, that other people that have taken the time to do it, where it would be a combo target where it would have an IDPA type outline, maybe humanoid. But then I would also love to have some things that are off the target that allow me to do, for example, the first drill in the fundamental 5 is the 5-shot group check or 5-shot zero drill, right? So maybe give me some small circles that allow me to do those and check elevation and windage on an optic. And, I may add some tools to the target. I think that'd be a great design of a target if I were to design one.
Back in the day, and this is going to kind of open up the competition part of the questions today. Back in the day, you and I used to shoot a lot of bowling pins, and still a big fan of that. Can you talk to why we chose to shoot bowling pins back then? And that was a thing back in the day. I don't know if anybody's still doing that a lot.
Yeah, they are doing that. There's a local club that actually is starting a bowling pin type match. So bowling pins, number two things, back in the day, they were readily available. So you had all these old bowling pins, maybe from these bowling alleys that were converting over and buying new pins. And the interesting thing about bowling pins, they have a very interesting shape and a very dense build. So if your ammunition will knock a bowling pin off of a table, and that the old bowling pin matches, basically that's what you had to do. You had to knock the bowling pins off the table. You didn't just knock them down, but you had to knock them off the table. And guys used to actually have bowling pin rounds versus their normal IPSC rounds. I think back in the day they had some specialized stuff with some jagged front nose that would cut into the bowling pin and spin it off the tables. But they're cheap, they're reactive, and they're kind of dense. So you have to hit them somewhat centered and somewhat solid, sometimes multiple times, to get them to fall. So I think that was the reason we did it. We had a few, and I think there's a good target or fun target to shoot out.
Yeah, I still have probably a dozen that I shoot, and I like it because it's reactive. That you got to keep shooting until it goes down, and that's something we're missing. And the target is small. You get multiple uses out of them, so they're just all really great tool. Williams says, I shoot pins and bowling balls, but I'm a bowler also, so I have them all the time. Gal says, Mike, we know you're a master of the gun. Do you still dry fire or you totally shoot ammo all the time? Good question.
Oh, no, I dry fire almost every day. I don't dry fire. I don't put a rig on and draw and dry fire like that, but I just literally not minutes, about 10 minutes before I got on this podcast, I just finished a workout, and in between my sets, I maybe the best way to describe this verbally would be like instead of shadow boxing and working strikes, I'm shadow boxing with a gun, right? So I may be working on So I'll do let me back up. Let me be specific so people don't get confused about what I'm talking about. So I'm doing conditioning today, and I set the timer up for about 50 minutes. And I have a timer on my watch as well. So I'm using a Morpheus heart rate strap, so I know where my heart rate is. So I get on an elliptical or a bike out there, and I run for 3 minutes. I may then do a reverse cycle, 3 minutes, where I'm pedaling backwards, and then for 3 minutes I'll walk over. I'll pick up my dry fire gun, and I have a variety of targets set up in my garage. So the first 3-minute dry fire drill, where I'm keeping my heart rate up, is shooting and moving. So I'm staying low. In this case, I'm training more so for IDPA. So I'm making sure my dot stabilizes and stays where the 0 area would be on the target. And then I come into position and maybe turn and shoot a couple targets on the wall, then shoot back out of position. Then back on the bike or the elliptical or whatever for another 3 to 6 minutes. And then I'm off. And then I may do what we call moving transitions, which means you shoot a target, then you transition maybe hard right to another target, but you start moving at the same time. And there's a little bit of a destabilization of the gun that happens when you do that moving transition. So now I'm working on stabilizing the gun, but I'm doing it in continual motion format, so my heart rate still stays where it needs to stay. And so I would call that dry fire. And then I may do one drill that is, for example, 2 trigger pulls, not clicks necessarily, to a target on the wall, shift my body weight, center the dot on a still target like a pepper popper. I have these little mini pepper popper things on my garage wall. So yes, I would call that dry fire, although it's not traditional stand and draw dry fire or stand and reload dry fire. I dry fire 3 to 5 times each week, at least, in almost every single workout. On my rest sets, I'm dry firing.
Oh, I love it, man. Tony says I have a target on my wall here in the shop and dry fire while watching this. Love it. Rudy says, do you wear your Morpheus when you roll in BJJ? If so, is it recording a combined strength and cardio workout?
Boy, that's a fantastic question. I don't wear my Morpheus when I roll. It is a chest strap. I don't know how that would stand up to rolling. I suspect it would probably come off because I'm probably doing no gi. I may try that. There will be no downside if it did come off. I would just reset. I've actually looked at, they make a pretty good armband. I don't remember the company that makes that armband, where a buddy of mine wears it under his compression shirt. So that might be a viable thing, because I would love to be able to track my heart rate when I roll and I do BJJ. I don't currently do that. I just do it I just use Morpheus for all conditioning sessions. And by the way, we could talk about conditioning a little bit if you want. I think it's really one of the secrets to a lot of things. And I wear it for all my weight workouts as well, simply so I can track my heart rate during my rest sets where I can rest.
Interesting. Brian says the newer target designs tend to put as many overlaid components on one sheet as they can. Some of them end up just being cluttered. Yeah, well, I agree with that.
I agree with that.
Yeah. PJ says I have a bunch of 30% size Q targets, which make the full size ones look huge. Great training tool.
Interesting on that, PJ. I have the 1/3 size, both classic, what we call turtle targets for IPSC, and I have the same thing for U.S.A. I actually use those for my dry fire targets, but they're also great targets if you go to an indoor range and you're limited on distance. They're made to be shot at. You could shoot 22s at them. You could do rifle training on them. They're smaller, so they get pretty shot up pretty quickly, but they're really valuable training tools.
So we've kind of been tiptoeing our way around competition. Let's just go ahead and jump into it, man. How did you get into it, and why, as a young man, did you want to get into competition shooting?
So I found competition shooting by watching a video, and that's not true. I think the first exposure I had to competition shooting would have been the American Handgunner. And there was one other primary magazine that we used to buy all the time. And in those magazines, they would have the Steel Challenge and the U.S.A. Nationals. They had full coverage and big glossy print. That's the only way you could consume this stuff. The internet didn't exist back then, right? And we had DVDs, and we didn't have DVDs. We had VHS.
VHS,
right?
Brother.
Right? But I bought the gun magazines, Guns and Ammo and American Handgun. I think American Handgunner was probably my favorite. And I learned about competitions there. And then I probably learned about USPSA there. Then, of course, in the gun magazines, I ordered, Rich remembers this, all the Barnhart videos and the USPSA National. So I watched all these guys shoot, and I was enamored by it. And we were both in the Marine Corps at that time. Of course, I had shot before the Marine Corps a lot. I loved handgun shooting, but that's where I was introduced to competition shooting. So we actually deployed on a Mediterranean cruise. Rich and I were together. We were on different ships. But when I was there on that cruise, I ordered a gun. I ordered holsters, mag pouches. I had a gun built while I was away. Back in the day, it was a comped Colt Gold Cup 45, which I was a caliber behind, by the way. Back then, everybody was shooting compensated 38 supers. So anyways, that's what happened. I got back, went to my first match. The gun didn't work at all. And I placed like 99th in a club match, whatever it was, but just fell in love with it. So.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was around 92. You came over to the house one night and you're like, dude, check this out. And you popped it in the VHS and hit play. Awesome. And it was I think it was a Dillon commercial with Rob Latham shooting tracer rounds at targets.
That's right.
It was the freaking coolest thing.
Yeah.
If you've seen that video, it was just a really sweet.
Yeah, he's pop, 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 and you can see the tracer rounds hitting.
And we were like,
what a great idea for a video, by the way.
It was amazing, still to this day. And then there was the Miami Vice video,
Oh, yes. The dude was an IPSC shooter. So we're like, oh, man, that guy's an IPSC shooter. The guy that drew and killed the one guy on the show.
Yeah. So Jerry Barnhart's a legend, man. I don't know where that guy is at today. I think he's still alive. I
don't know. He's still teaching a little bit. I'm not sure.
I'd love to pick his brain.
Yeah.
So now that you've been competing as a 21-year-old guy, and now that you're in your 50s, what have you seen is the difference mainly?
Well, if you're asking about the difference in me, or the difference in the sport itself,
I think there's two questions there, Mike. I think there's you, and then let's talk about how you've seen the sport evolve.
Yeah. So the difference with me is I'm certainly very athletic and in very good shape for a 52-year-old, but there's no competing with for example, a 27-year-old AMU full-time shooter in terms of his physicality and speed. I'm a senior in IDPA. I'm a senior in IPSC. I'm not a senior in USPSA yet. Senior is 50, I believe, for IDPA and IPSC. It's 55 for USPSA. But senior division is a thing, I mean, the reality is, with these matches that are still very athletic, and we could talk about the evolution of the matches, a lot of them they're a combination running and shooting matches, right? In a pure shooting match, let's just say we limited the shooting area to an 8-foot box, right? Or a 4 or 5 yard box. I would be much more competitive with a young guy because he's not going to outrun me. He's going to have to outshoot me. So I would be much more competitive. The more you increase the accuracy in that match, the more competitive I would probably be in some cases. And I'm not saying the younger, faster shooters can't shoot. They're fantastically talented. The level of shooting, Rich, it's unbelievable. I'll give you an example. I just competed in the IPSC Nationals. I trained my butt off for it. I was 30 or 31st overall.
Wow.
Max Michel was 20th overall.
Holy cow.
And he shot a good match. I think he was very surprised by his finish. That's the level they're pushing it to. Now, it was an IPSC match, and I had a couple things that happened to me. So, for example, in IPSC, it tends to be more technical and more physical. There was a wall stage. You literally had to climb up this kind of angular wall. It wasn't terribly hard. I missed my footwork on it, and I fell. I fell on it. I lost several seconds on the fall, and then I had a big jam because my muzzle hit the wall. So, there's several places. Would I have made the top 20? Probably. And I had several bad stages where little things like that happened. Had another stage where this has never happened in my competitive shooting career. A piece of brass got caught in the window of my optic and laid in the optic perfectly, so it blocked the emitter from emitting a dot. Like normally I would just ignore the brass there and keep shooting. If you see a dot, you can shoot, right? just like a wet optic. Nope, I had to stop and dump the brass out before I could continue shooting. But that's the level of the skill out there these days. That's the place it's gone to. In the June Carry Optics Nationals, I'll be superhuman if I make the top 10. And a lot of people may say, well, man, you got to look at it differently. You got to go in and plan on winning. And all. Yeah, I am planning on winning, but I'm also realistic. It's no different than Rich. If you were to start to play NBA basketball right now, and you've got plenty of disposable income, and you hire the best coaches on the planet, and you can literally play basketball 8 hours a day, guess what? You're not making it to the NBA.
Not a chance.
So there's a physicality in there, and the matches have gone from being more technical and probably more accuracy related to some of them are hose fests, some of them are more running matches, some of them aren't. Like last year's U.S.A Nationals was so hard, Rich. It was almost too hard. It was too. There's some shots I had difficulty making with iron sights. Well, and guess what? I need to be a better shot. Stop being a wimp. So why does Mike Seeklander keep training then? If I'm going to be a top 20 or top 10 contender, well, because guess what? What else am I going to do? Stop.
Well,
I train to learn.
Well, let's say, you've had your hips replaced, both of them,
Yep.
you've battled through some shoulder issues, your eyesight, anybody's eyesight in their 50s is degraded from what it used to be. So is it the physical limitations combined with where the sport has gone, or is it just one or the other?
I think it's probably both, man. It's probably it's where the sport has gone. It is the physical limitations. I think it's both. I really think it's probably both. Like the biggest division by far is carry optics. There is such a deep body of talent in that area. You imagine this. I'll give you an example for those that are listening and watching. There was a stage. It was what they call a jungle type run. So they normally will set up a stage up like a wash. It's a physical stage where, it's a terrain stage. So there's targets behind trees and behind bushes or whatever else. In this particular stage, I don't know, Rich, it was probably 50 yards total of running ish, maybe a little bit less. I posted on Livefire, and there were 8 targets. I don't know, something like that. Not a lot of targets. You had to step out, load, and start shooting. And I might have been able to move a little faster on some of the targets, but it's a low hit factor, so you still have to shoot pretty accurately. But I shot a good run. I'm like, that's about as good as I could do that. Maybe I could find a second if I did it again. Maybe a second. But Max, my buddy Max, ran it right after me, or maybe it was right before me, and he was 4 seconds faster. That's just physicality. They're just, and if you watch me shoot, you're like, man, I'm moving out pretty good for a 52-year-old. That's just the bottom line. But any large stage, any shooting competition, and if you look at the other stages, the strong hand only stage, the weak hand only stage, the stage where we weren't moving very much, I was right there, generally speaking, in terms of time. But guys are also pushing the skill level to the next level, which is one of the big reasons I keep training, because I have to have my skill level there so I can translate that to the people that I coach and teach on the range.
Yeah. Tony says I'm in my prime. One of my favorite movie lines with Doc Holliday utters that in the movie Tombstone. I absolutely love that. Yeah. I think it's a good answer, but it also reminds me of there's a video on YouTube, you can probably find it, and it's like the evolution of the parallel bars or something like that. And it's talking about gymnastics, and it shows like 1936 Olympics, this was a perfect score 10 on the parallel bars relative to 2022. And if you would have shown somebody that in 1930 something, they'd be like, there's no way a human being cannot do those things.
Absolutely.
And yet they're doing it. Look at some of from the early 80s IPSC runs to now, and you're just like, so it makes me wonder, where do you think the sport's going to be in 10, 20, 30, 40 years?
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know. 10, 20, 30 years is so long down the road. I don't know if we'll have the same kind of sport, and not because of maybe complete gun outlaws, but I think maybe I think I think we'll eventually evolve to the point where I don't know. I'm not sure, man. I wonder if maybe we'll have more VR, digital, things that are there's not a safety risk as much anymore. There's not a lead risk in terms of putting lead into the berms and splattering it up into the air. And I just wonder how that's going to change in the near future. I don't know, 5 or 10 years probably. So it's going to keep evolving, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I really don't know where the sport's going.
I don't
But
know.
interesting.
Other than, I could see the sites really going in some really cool directions, but especially on the carry optics division. But I was, Dr. Fuller, it doesn't appear that he's on this. He sent me a really cool article written by the FBI in 1987. And it's where they had like a ballistic symposium, and they brought in all these great engineers and just let them play with ballistics for 3 days. And they wrote a paper at the end of it. And the reason I'm saying this, it was basically like 9mm 45. We got to do something. This is coming on the heels of the Miami shootout in 1986. So they're like, we got a problem. We got to solve it. And I remember one of the conclusions of the paper was, Mike, it said the 9mm is the future of this, but we're going to be 10 years from now in order to get the ballistic technology where it needs to be in order to have basically like a perfect round. Of course, shot placement is king, and they're very clear in the paper, but it says we can see this round becoming something. It's going to take time to
Interesting.
get there. So I know it's very interesting and very true. But it's a remarkable that they said that and they saw the future. And I kind of wonder if you could look in the future of the sport.
Mm. Um, yeah, I think we're going to have some dramatically different optic technical advantages, or maybe advancements is be a better word to use. I'm not sure what that will be, whether it's holographic or I just think we're on the cutting edge of that changing entirely from a visual standpoint. I think that there probably will, like, there's a lot of people using this ACE VR system and training with it and utilizing. I think that will really eventually explode, maybe potentially into its own sport where a lot of people are competing with, some sort of virtual reality from home. So they never go to maybe a club match. They show up with their virtual reality kind of system and shoot like that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. As far as the gear, it's I don't know. It's hard to say, man.
Yeah. Let's go to the next question here. I don't know. Have you seen the new movie Civil War?
I have not.
Okay. I have. We could talk about that offline, but you got a movie like Civil War coming out, just came out a couple weeks ago. And it's talking about what would a civil war look like in modern day America, 2024 America. And then you have the Netflix movie that the Obamas produced, Leave
Yep.
the World Behind. We've talked about on the show before, predictive programming. Do you think someone knows something that we don't, or we're being kind of corralled into something?
Does someone know something that we don't? That's the question of the day, man. I don't know, man. You know what? Part of me thinks there's a possibility there. I definitely think that the global elite know some things that we don't. Is it as organized and as evil as I think that maybe we try to envision, that we see from produced by Hollywood or TV shows? I don't know. I don't know if the global cabal elite are that intelligent and organized to do that. I certainly think there are some things going on that are not uh, known to us. But I don't know if it's as organized as a lot of people would
Yeah.
make believe that they would be. And I can tell you, if we're talking about, let's talk about the government specifically. Yeah, they do a lot of wild stuff. Who knows what they're doing and what they've done and what we don't know that they're doing. But I don't know if they're organized enough to really be tainting or leaning a different direction. I mean, as you know, we have been in the government. We know people in the government. We know people in unique positions in the government,
Mhm.
and they're a lot. The ones I know and work with are a lot like us,
Yep.
and they're just pretty down to earth folks that are family people that. So I don't know if I see a lot of that stuff, but where is Hollywood getting these ideas? I don't know. Maybe they're just playing off of what social media is already doing to us. I think social media and probably some bad actors out there that have influenced social media. This could be Russia and China or some variety of players out there. I think they absolutely have influenced what we look at and how we look at it and what we are as a country. I think we've been infiltrated to an extent. I think that's pretty public that they, in the 80s, Russia had that plan, and I think they've executed well on it. But I don't know, man. I have to watch the movie Civil War. We can talk about it online or offline. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think those of us that are awake and paying attention to what's going on, there's no surprises at Civil War. I think, if anything, I would critique them for being too apolitical. They don't really take a side. You don't know why California and Texas have joined forces and why they're trying to overthrow the government and why they're trying to kill the president. The lens with which they shoot the movie is through the protagonist, which is a couple of journalists that are trying to make their way from New York to Washington, D.C. And it's kind of like a Dorothy going down the yellow brick road kind of thing. They meet some really horrific scenes and things of this nature, but the protagonists are unlikable. You know, there's none of the journalists that anybody will connect with. So it's not a great movie, which pains me to say, because I really am a fan of that director's movies. He wrote and directed Ex Machina, one of my favorite movies, as well as this one. I think it could have been done better, but if you have someone that's like not paying attention, my wife is sitting there with me, my lovely bride, Miss Lisa, and she's like, why are they fighting? Why is this, why did the government strafe this highway, a highway of American citizens, their traffic's all bottlenecked, and the F-22 Raptors have just chewed this highway to pieces. And I'm like, I said, look at any picture from 1863 taken by Matthew Brady, the famous Civil War photographer. You'll see the similar scene, only your brain is going to see horses and carriages that have been hit by cannon fire. I said, it's the same damn thing, only now we're using different munitions, and we drive instead of a carriage, we drive in a car. So anyway, I think somebody that's not paying attention will probably be like, what in the hell? If you're paying attention, you're like, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Rudy has a question. What keeps you up at night? I think that supposes that you actually sleep, which is another.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I try to be a realist in terms of what I look at. I'm certainly I don't know. Here's my problem is, and this doesn't keep me up at night, by the way. Nothing does, because I appreciate sleep too much. But thoughts are like we tend to say a lot of they, or that's the folks over there. They're the woke people. I use that word because I still can't really, Mike Seeklander can't really put his finger on what woke is. I think I know kind of what it is, but I don't really even know who they are. So here's one of the problems I have is we talk about, if you're awake, you observe a lot of different things that have never occurred in history. I totally agree with that. But I still have a hard time, and maybe you can do it better than I can do it, Rich, putting my finger on who the theys are that are organizing all these things that we're talking about that we don't believe in. Like, who are they? Is it some sort of global elite or some entity out there that is more organized than I see or believe in? And if so, why have the good people that I've trained and worked with not bumped into these people more often and blared the horns? Or maybe they have and I haven't heard it, but I've never really been able to put my finger on what that means or who they are. Because I know when I look at the people in my neighborhood or down the street, or even when I travel to a place that would seem it's left-leaning, liberal, and when I say that, I'm not opposed to that. Everybody has their right. Rich, we have great friends that would be a little bit more liberal. We have great friends that are certainly very conservative. So I love you all. You're Americans. You're free to do whatever you want as long as you don't mess with me. But in Boston, Massachusetts, I'm out there teaching a class, or Massachusetts or California, I look around like, okay, there's some knuckleheads out there, certainly a lot of them, but there are a whole lot of good people that are just like, yeah, I just want to go to work, just want to pay my taxes, just want to raise my family. So who are these people? So I don't know if a lot of those things keep me up at night. I just think about them and I'm trying to put my finger on who they are and what it is. And I still can't.
Dr. Gadsad wrote a really good book, and I'm trying to think of the name of it, but basically he talks about how this is a mind virus. The Parasitic Mind, that's the name of it. Fantastic book. Highly recommend it. He's been on Joe Rogan a lot. Dr. Gadsad has. Yeah, I encourage you, if you're trying to wrap your head around what is this thing and how poisonous it can truly be to young developing minds, I'd encourage you to check that book out. And that reminds me, man, I had a nightmare last night. I like kicked the dog off the bed, woke up. I mean, just really bad nightmare. And so I'm going to get real with y'all for a minute. And what reminded me of that is the question that Rudy posed, as well as I see my brother Jeff on here. Yesterday, Jeff and I were talking about the stuff that's going on with the college campus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's Columbia or in Austin, what in the hell is going on? And Jeff was kind of like saying, the left, whatever the left is, if we're going to use them as the metaphorical they in our scenario, the left is really poisoning kids' minds. So my dream, Mike, and those listening, was that I'm entrusted with taking care of these baby eagles, and they're in this giant like plastic nest, and I'm looking at the baby eagles, and they're kind of moving around and stuff like this, and all of a sudden the snake crawls in to the nest, and I'm like, oh, I don't have my gun on me, so I'm yelling at somebody, I don't remember who, to get my gun so I can, and I look in there, and all these snakes are coming in with the baby eagles, and the baby eagles are like, not that snakes have mammary glands, but it was almost like they were feeding on the snakes as the snakes were about to eat them. And one of them lunged at me and I kicked it. And that's when I woke myself up, because I'm kicking our wolfhound off the bed. But as I'm trying to feel like, what the hell, where did that come from? It reminded me of the conversation I had with my brother Jeff the night prior. And I'm like, because he was talking about they're poisoning these young Americans. They're tearing this country apart with this ideology. Now, who's in charge of the ideology? Where's it coming from? Who's the cabal, if there is one? I don't freaking know, man. But I thought the dream was really wild.
Yeah, that's a scary dream, and the ideology and the where this is coming from. That's a great. I don't know the answer to that. Of course, I don't know the answer to that, but I can't figure it out. I mean, I've still asked everybody I talk to. I'm like, hey, why are these large educational institutions standardly left, liberal? Once again, I don't even know what that is anymore. I'm not sure what that means either, because I think the folks that might have said before, hey, I'm a left-leaning, Democrat, we'll call out a political party here, now don't agree with a lot of things in that party and those decisions. So I don't even know exactly what that is. I know it's very interesting. Like, I was just in the state of Virginia doing some stuff, and one of the main radio ads I heard over and over again was some female running for congressman or maybe Congress or senator, and one of her things was, I'm a mother of 6 and I want more common sense and left and less MAGA extremists. Right. So, she's I find that so weird and so divisive that we're labeled like that, or we, I don't know who's we. It's all such a weird thing. Like, I don't even know. I don't know any of them. So I'm trying to figure out, where is, if you went to Harvard or UCLA, or where did this stuff come from? Now, if you look at the historical aspects, you might say, well, we were in fact infiltrated by Russia in the 70s and 80s, and they started to inject these professors that tended to push these socialism and communism agendas. Of course, they were, when they were developing the first atomic bomb, there was a communist drive in the United States of America. I mean, it was very, very apparent. It was very much out there. So it's not like now in the new age, everything is all messed up and weird. Things were pretty weird back then. We just didn't have the social media and the connection of the internet connecting billions of people and allowing people to influence other humans, and specifically the kids. I think if we were to look at anything that's not necessarily evil, but influential and really turning the tide of who our children are and who our young people are. It's the internet. It's the most incredible research tool and provider of information ever, but it's also one of the single most dangerous things ever to be exposed to the other billions of humans, and more importantly, the opinions and the thoughts and the mannerisms that oftentimes are not necessarily true, that allow someone with an agenda to be pushed. And you know what, Rich? I will say that I think that the algorithms and the artificial intelligence potential algorithms are unique in that they don't know any better than to drive traffic to a specific entity and to continue to try to keep traffic there. So when someone as a human with our human brain sees something weird or extreme, we tend to follow that and watch it and be attracted to that. So this algorithm and this AI whatever says, oh, well, that's what they're attracted to. We need to create more of this, and we need to show more humans more of this, which is actually not what we want to see as humans. It's just what happened to catch our eye because it was so weird and extreme that we're like, I got to look at that for a second. What is that thing? What is that idea or ideal?
Well, it's shaping, it's hijacking and then shaping young minds. And why is that a problem? And again, I will go back to my brother Jeff. Last night we were playing dominoes, which is something that him and his wife and me and my wife have really enjoyed lately. And Jeff was saying, he's taking this linguistic class in college. He's like, hey, did you know there's an Aboriginal tribe in Australia that they see the world in the sense of cardinal directions, and their language is based around cardinal directions, and the way they would structure a family or do anything has to do with north, south, east, and west. I said, yeah, that's the Sanford-Whorf hypothesis of how your brain is shaped like that. And once it gets wired that way, as you know from your studies of how the mind works and myelinates, once it's wired a certain way, man, there ain't no unwiring it. You have to build better, stronger patterns.
Yeah.
And with the internet coming at you all day, every day, those patterns are going to be wired for life, which is why the lens with which this generation sees the world is somewhat different than the way our generation sees the world. Would you agree with that?
I would completely agree. Yeah, and if you look at a lot of these major institutions, I think, and once again, instead of some evil force driving, I think you could look at a pattern of a large educational institution and who works at those institutions and who runs them, whether they're professors, they're the head dean or whatever you want to call in the particular institution, that has probably never actually been in the real world for any amount of time. So I think that's one of the problems is the people that are influencing the kids have done nothing but that. They're education specialists that have done nothing but been in college or high-level college courses. They've never probably been in the military, most cases. They've probably never built a business or ran a business, and now they influence all these young people. And then guess what? That young person decides, instead of going out and working and learning about the world and life, they're going to continue to facilitate their education, and then eventually, maybe they can get on as a junior professor, and then they're like, hey, they're offering me a job. This is going to be a pretty good job, and boom, now they're the senior professor 18 years later that has no actual experience at anything but being immersed in this, I don't know if a cult is the right word, this place, right, of education. I think that's a big thing. I think, well, we've already been down this path, how we solve a lot of these problems. That's not what this podcast is about. It's supposed to be interesting and fun about me, but solving the problem would be as simple as making people actually start businesses or join the military. And then from there, they would probably stop doing foolish stuff.
Yeah. Speaking about circling it back to today's topic, Jeff asked, while training law enforcement, have you seen a change in types of use of force training?
No, I honestly haven't, Jeff. I can't really address that because, to be honest with you, I don't deal with use of force training. I teach shooting. I teach particular shooting skills with rifle and handgun. That's my hyper-focused area that I specialized in. Not that I don't care about use of force training, but it's not my jam. I teach people when the gun needs to come out how to be more effective with it.
That's a great point, man. So you probably don't see that like maybe a DT instructor does.
No.
Yeah. I want to. So, are you personally taking, you or your family or what have you, taking any steps for a potential poop to hit the fan type scenario in the year or years to come?
Sure. I mean, we've always taken steps. I mean, I think that the steps, I think that I'm not an extremist in that area either, but certainly you have to have had blinders on not to see what happened during some hurricanes and some
Mhm.
snowstorms and some viruses, and to not be at least a little bit concerned and be prepared. So yes, 100%. Certainly we have to an extent, a food stock. We certainly have plenty of ammo and firearms training, but I'm not someone either that just as the, the maybe the man of the family or the father of the family is like forcing my wife and my kids to go out and we're going to go to the range. We're going to organize tactical training, and I got them all
Mhm.
kitted up with vests. But they all know how to shoot. They all know how to defend themselves. They're all very safety conscious. They're all very security conscious. I think within reason. Probably my son more so than maybe daughters. But yes, I think we've been preparing for a long time. But that's just self defense. I think the American Warrior Side is based on simple, logical self defense principles such as you know doors and locking and things like that. And um, that's the way I tend to focus, man.
No, good answer. Neil says, back to competition. I'm limited in rounds, probably 8 to 10,000 a year. Will your competition training program be a good fit? Also, I train U.S.P.S.A. once per week and try to get to the range one other day during the week.
Great question, Neil. Well, it depends on which competition program you're talking about. I have like 4 or 5 different programs. I think any of my educational content would probably be appropriate and certainly help be more effective. So one of the things that with those 8 to 10K a year, you can get incredibly skilled with 8 to 10K a year and a large amount of dry fire. I mean, you could be really, really a very, very good competition shooter. But out of those 8 to 10K, the more time you're wasting or maybe ingraining in proper technique would be an issue. So learn how to shoot. And I can guarantee whatever program you select, whether you do the competition handgun fundamentals or the full old school U.S.P.S.A. program called your competition handgun training program, or maybe the IDPA mastery program, you're certainly going to learn something. And all of the programs are designed to teach people how to shoot better and then apply those however they want to in whatever sport they're going to do.
Let me give a plug. You mentioned one of your favorite books was your defensive rifle training program. Absolutely, hands down, probably I would say, yeah, the favorite book you've written. Even though I wrote a chapter in Art of Instruction, so I am partial to that one, I still think your rifle uh, handgun, your rifle book is fantastic. And if you've shared today's show, that might be one of the things that you choose to receive. So there's that.
Boom.
Yeah, boom. What is Mike Seeklander's everyday carry?
Right now, we haven't talked about that. I'm carrying a SIG 365 on a macro Wilson Combat frame and Wilson Combat top end with what is the RMRC, the micro RMR right now. I may switch that out very, very soon with a manual thumb safety, ambidextrous aftermarket thumb safety.
Nice. What, anything else in your pockets?
I will always have a knife on of a variety. Right now, I'm using a front opening auto knife, the one that our buddy Virgil turned us on to or me on to.
Hmm.
I've gone back and forth there. I'm actually looking at maybe going back to potentially a fixed blade. I'll have that, a knife. I carry a single second magazine on my left side, and I carry appendix, as most people know. Just did a show on the appendix carry position, and then one of the Surefire stilettos, which is I do the Stiletto Pro, which is the metal version of that light. I love that light. It's a fantastic low light flashlight.
Do you have it? You don't have it on you, do you?
I don't have it on me, no.
Okay. Yeah. The reason I'm asking is that does a stiletto, you can turn it on from the rear?
It has an instant activation switch on the rear, but on the side of it, it also has a function where you just turn on a lower a lower illumination version of it. So if you're just working on something small and you don't want to, super bright and to save battery power, you can just turn on. It's a permanent on. So you push that button, it stays on, and you can work on whatever you're working on. But the end switch is instant activation, temporary, which I love because you can light it up and use the techniques that I teach and utilize. And then, it doesn't click on. I use the side switch for the click on.
Yeah, the reason I was asking is I was thinking that there was one, maybe it's a new light that Streamlight has out that it's slim and flat like the stiletto, but it doesn't have a rear.
That's a Streamlight. That's a Streamlight. I have one of those as well. They're fantastic. What is that called? I'm drawing a blank at the model. Someone pull it up there. But the stiletto is a Surefire product.
Okay.
You're talking about
I'm thinking the Streamlight, and it doesn't have a rear switch. And
that's correct.
Yeah, which is a problem.
They actually have a switch on the side. I love Streamlights as well. I will carry the MicroStream maybe sometimes in dress pants, and then the ProTac 1L or 2L. Great flashlights. The little MicroStreams are actually USB rechargeable now, which is pretty awesome. So,
yeah, big fan. Let's see here. Last question, Mike. Thank you for being on today on your show. What are a few things that our listeners can do to make themselves hard to kill? Not just one or two, but if there's a few, throw them out there.
Well, if you're certainly not addressing your own fitness levels, you probably should. Most of our listeners and viewers and watchers are, in the middle ages, 30s and 40s, probably a professional. I'm going to be honest, I could say, hey, get your handgun and go train every day with your defensive handgun. But if you're not addressing your health and your fitness, it's probably going to kill you before a gunfight is. So address your health and fitness. For you older warriors and warriorettes, I would certainly tell you to focus on your conditioning first, and then staying as strong as you possibly can through your later years. There's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of stuff you can read on that. Peter Attia wrote a really good book recently. A lot of great material out there we could put in the show notes and some links if folks want to. So number one, address your health and fitness through your diet and your workout regimen. Number two, address the other things, address your home. Be prepared to defend it. Be prepared to act. Interestingly enough, you say that, Richard, you asked that question, and I just posted, or I had a picture, a screenshot of the FBI director continues to warn of potential organized attacks in the U.S. I think he said it's one of the highest levels, or the extreme level right now. And this is multiple times I've heard this. Now, I've also heard the FBI is trying to get funding approved. So, but I don't think a guy's going up there and making some stuff up to get a funding approved. Whether or not you like the FBI or believe in some of the things it's doing, it also has tentacles all over the place, and it's also connected to other intel agencies. So I would take that very, very serious. They're talking about organized attacks in public places. So what that means, I don't know. It doesn't change things for me. I still carry a gun on a regular basis. Obviously, I train on a regular basis because I shoot for a living. So make sure your skills are there and you're prepared. And I would tell probably people, third of all is, address all of your other small things. Like, you may have a snowstorm, Rich. You may have a hurricane hit. You may have COVID-3, COVID-4 hit, and you need to stay in your house for a few weeks or a month smartly and safely, and you need some food to do that. So where are you going to get some food? What beyond that, control what you can control. I don't know what that is necessarily. I'm not going to worry about the volcano in Montana, because if it goes, guess what, man? Just have fun for the 8 hours you have left to live, right?
Yeah.
I used to worry a lot about, man, Russians launched some nukes. Can I get back to my home if I'm traveling? If that happens, not a lot I can worry about there. So control.
No, but I find those kind of things fun. When I'm sitting in the hot tub or something like that, staring off into space, I let my mind drift into that. And I think, it's so for stuff like the volcano or a cyber attack, because we've all heard Christopher Wray's warnings, the FBI director.
That's right. And
I'm sure he knows. He's looking at the intel. He knows what the chatter is. He could give some specificity if he wanted to, but on some level, what good would it do? A lot of people would overreact. But I think a Chinese cyber attack is not off the table. Nukes are not off the table. I pointed out that when Iran launched their in excess of 300 drones and missiles at Israel, one of the missiles purposefully, only one, went into outer space and then dropped back down. Guys, if you can get to outer space, you can put that damn missile wherever you want on the planet, including the Pentagon, your house, anywhere. So I think that was language from Iran going, guess what we can do? And now you know we can do it because we just did it. And I'm reading, I know Annie Jacobson is one of your favorite authors. I'm reading her book on nuclear war right now, which is fantastic, by the
Yeah,
way.
I need to get that. That's the newest one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
newest one.
I'll
It's
get it.
phenomenal. But it just, she interviews everybody. She lays out a scenario, and all the experts that she's talking to, there's never been a time in history, not the 1950s, not any time more than now, that this is a legitimate threat. So how do you do that? Well, you carry your EDC, the things we've been talking about. You have some cash on you, some precious metals. You have a plan, and that is, if I get caught in town and there's an EMP, and when I go to town here on the plateau, I'm 25-minute drive away from home. That's a day's walk, right?
Yeah.
So I can go to Walmart with $100 in my pocket, buy a cheap BMX bike, and pedal my fat ass to the house. So thinking these things through doesn't cost you anything. And it may help you decide, you know what? I'm willing to take that risk and not have that piece of kit or that training, or some things I need to get that training.
Yeah.
I need to have that kit. What do you think?
I love it. I think we're talking about thought exercises, and those
Mhm.
thought exercises probably may prompt an action on your part. And if your thought exercise brings you to the realization that you're not prepared for something or another, and it's within your control to prepare for it, then prepare for it. Keep things practical preparation. The stuff that we teach and have inside the vault oftentimes is very applicable to something that is guaranteed to happen. You're going to lose power because of a storm in the future. We're
Right.
going to have a hurricane. We probably will in the very near future have a round 2 of some variant of a COVID. These
Mhm.
things are going to happen. And guess what? The thought exercise and being prepared for those things is very similar to being prepared for, a small scale grid outage or
Well, when
whatever
you
else.
get ready for a stage, Mike, you run that stage in your head
Right.
30 times. I don't know.
As many times as I can. It's a
It's the
thought
same
exercise.
damn thing. You run those
Exactly.
thought exercises. It doesn't cost anything, and it's just good, solid preparation.
Yeah.
PJ has a great point. PJ, of course, is a retired FBI agent. Won't say his real name, but he says the intel and risk level is legit. To be aware and be prepared. Well, there you have it from the horse's mouth. Tony says have plenty of gourmet freeze-dried food.
Amen.
Tony, of course, owns Fast Group, which says freeze-dried food. So put a link in there, Tony, and we'll make sure people get that. Alan says I'm staying active, walking more, lost weight, tending to worn out joints, instructing, shooting, still have more years in me, enjoying my life, but being prepared. Well said, brother. Brian Schuler says, thank you, gentlemen. As always, your content is excellent. Sometimes this type of Q&A is more educational than a skill-based show. They are both very valuable. Thank you so much, sir. And Tony says it's fastgroupfoods.com. And I have some of Tony's freeze-dried food, and I can attest that it is fantastic. Mike, that's all I got, brother. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, folks. Thanks for watching and listening. If you're just listening to the podcast, be prepared, man. You want me to take it out, or you want to do it, Mr. Rich?
Please, brother, take us out.
Hey, figure this out, folks. The fight is going to be coming in one form or another. We're not sure what that is. I think that's our tagline, of course. The fight is coming. Be ready. We don't know what that means. Maybe it's a huge blizzard. Maybe it's a hurricane wherever you live. Maybe it's some sort of grid outage because of something weather related. Maybe it's a solar flare. Maybe it's something worse. But the bottom line is the fight is coming in some form or another. Make sure you're ready.